Coming to you from the city of the weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm.
Well, hello everybody, and happy Tuesday night. Hope you're doing well. Hope everybody had a fantastic St. Patrick's Day today. What an amazing day. I had a great weekend myself. I got to spend my weekend at the first and inaugural Psy Games intensive, where it was a psychokinesis intensive. We learned to bend spoons and silverware. That was wild. Saw people magnetize things with their mind, all kinds of things. It was a beautiful and amazing weekend. Thank you so much, Hakeem Isler, for putting that together, folks. We will be having Hakeem on to talk soon about the Psy Games. It is an amazing event, and it is really something that I think when it comes to Psy research, it's probably, of all the communities that I belong to, my favorite community, because everybody is really in it for the research end of things, and there is truly an ethical component. Like, there was a whole day of this weekend spent on the ethics of psychokinesis and the use of psychokinesis and forms of biokinesis, things like that. So that's why I love it, is because you discuss those things, you openly discuss them and talk about the importance of them. So thank you, Hakeem, for all that you do on that front. We have a great show for you tonight. In the second part, we'll be joined by Jared Murphyt. We'll be talking about ancient technologies and civilizations from the way that humanity has been rebirthed numerous times, and how rapidly we forget just about everything. I mean, even culturally, it's pretty fascinating. Like, give it a generation sometimes, and knowledge just vanishes. And in the first part tonight, we are happy to welcome for the first time Mark Cowden. He is the author of Spirit Voices, the first live conversation between worlds. His website is marklcowden.com. He is a paranormal investigator. He has been on shows on BBC, all kinds of things. Welcome to the show, Mark. How are you this evening?
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me, and happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody, from the mysterious Emerald Isle.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite holidays. I worked in bars for years as an audio engineer, so it was always one of those days that, like, it was just chock full of fun. We always had great bands. It was always something that everybody was there for good reasons. There were rarely problems. So for you over there, what is St. Patrick's Day like over there? Is it as regaled as it is over here, dyeing rivers green and things like that, Mark?
No, well, they wouldn't go as far as dyeing rivers green, but I would say it's the one day where the Irish get to be unapologetic about being Irish.
All right.
You know, it's a day full of community spirit and festivals and fun and parades. And earlier today, I was in a place called Wexford, and I was just ended up in the middle of a St. Patrick's Day parade, where it's just normal people from the village driving the cars and driving their tractors and driving their go-karts down the middle of the street. And so it's just a day that they can be themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that day comes a lot of myth, comes a lot of legend, and with that comes a lot of misunderstanding, I think, Mark, with truths, realities, that kind of stuff. Even the idea of St. Patrick driving snakes out of Ireland, things like that. Yeah. So how did you first come to live over in Ireland, and What has it been like for you investigating these stories, these myths, these legends?
Well, my first experience with Ireland was in the end of the '90s. I was living in Seattle, and I had a music project there, and we finished the music project, and we just wanted to go somewhere for a couple of weeks and just forget about everything. And back then there was travel agents. I don't know if people can remember those, but you went to this shop and you bought a package vacation somewhere, and Ireland was cheap. So myself and one of the other guys, we got flights to Ireland. Before that, I had no notion of coming here. I didn't have any connections here. I wasn't one of these Americans that had every relative from the old countries, and so there really wasn't any reason for me to come here other than I saw an advertisement on the wall and the flights were cheap. But what I didn't realize is synchronicities were already happening. They were already taking place even up to a year before that point. So fast forward, and we fly to Ireland, and we visit this place called Newgrange. And Newgrange is a Neolithic monument that's 5,200 years old. It's the oldest man-made building in existence. It predates the pyramids, it predates Stonehenge. And I remember walking into this place, and this was maybe an hour after we got off the plane. And you go through this little visitor center, right? And it shows you a display of these apparent cavemen who built this place. And then you go into this place, and there's not been a single drop of water penetrate the roof of this building for over 5,000 years. It's been the exact same temperature inside for 5,000 years.
Wow.
It is structurally perfect. And I'm thinking, there's no way these guys in animal skins dragging their wives by the hair built this. Whoever built this was an expert in geometry, an expert in astronomy. And so right from the beginning, I knew there was something special about this place, something special about the people, the history. And it's history all around. Everywhere you look, you can be sitting in a bar. And that bar may be sat there for 800 years. Growing up in Oklahoma, the oldest thing I saw was maybe an old Civil War building that was 150 years old.
Yeah.
And then you can literally feel it whenever you're sitting in some of these places that 800 years of history, 5,000 years of history. And it's like, it brings new meaning to that phrase, if these walls could talk.
Yeah.
Because we eventually found that the walls can indeed talk, and they've got a lot to say. So, I ended up going back to Seattle, and I couldn't get this place out of my mind. And I had some connections here that did film and television. So I ended up ultimately coming back here for what was supposed to be 6 months. And that was about 25 years ago. So I'm still here. And right here in this chair where I sit, I'm literally 10 miles from the location where St. Patrick was enslaved by the pagans for 2 years and worked as a shepherd.
Wow.
5 miles to the east, there's a giant's grave. I've got a vampire legend a few miles away from here. I have Bigfoot reports in the Sparran Mountains, which is about a 3-minute drive from me. So literally all around me, within 5-10 minutes drive, I've got any kind of legend I want to investigate.
Wow. That is absolutely incredible. And once again, especially getting into just the fact of the age. Before the show, we were talking about how you lived in Texas for years. And yeah, while we have some age to things, the Alamo, things like that, it's only a couple few hundred years old. I remember 1993 was my semester in Rome, where I went, and all of our professors were certified tour guides, and we had like mass and the catacombs and things like that, where it's one of those, no, this is thousands of years of history that's here, and places that are amazingly built. And when you start absorbing all that and bringing it in, it really does bring about a curiosity in a different way and from a different light. How long after you moved to Ireland did you make the shift to doing this full time, to investigating these legends, myths, and lore?
Well, those are the kind of the reasons why I stayed so long. Anybody that's into this kind of stuff will recognize synchronicities, and synchronicities, when they start happening, it means you're on to something. And this is the first place that I was ever at where these synchronicities immediately started happening. And these occurrences weren't paranormal in themselves, but they were normal things that were happening with such a rare statistical possibility of them happening that it was mind blowing. And for instance, I was really had the urge to play music because I hadn't played music in a while. And I got an advert out of one of the newspapers for this band that were looking for a keyboard player. And I didn't even play keyboards, but I just kind of fluffed the audition and watched the guitar player and hit the same note so I could get into the band. And they thought it was great. So I ended up playing around for months with these guys. And the singer of the band was talking to me about Seattle, and she said, I was in Seattle last summer, and we started talking about this restaurant that both of us knew about. And the next time we had a rehearsal, she brought a photo album and was showing me a picture of her and her friends in this restaurant. And in the background of that picture, I was standing there. 8 billion people on the planet. What are the chances of we're thousands of miles away from each other. I had no intentions of coming here, but the previous year I ended up in a photograph with this girl, and she didn't even realize I was in there. I pointed myself out and I said, "Look," and she was mind blown. And on that same road that we had the rehearsal studio on, maybe a week, 2 weeks later, I bumped into this old man that I had met in New York a year before. And I had a 10-hour layover at the airport in New York. So I left the airport and just went for a walk. And I had a bottle of Bushmills whiskey in my bag. And I thought I was being sneaky. I was sitting on a bench and having the odd drink of this whiskey, just waiting for the time I had to go back to the airport. I spotted this man I thought was a homeless guy. And I saw that he had spotted the whiskey. So I said, "Do you want a drink?" And he came over, he had a cup. So he and I sat there for about an hour, finished off this bottle of Bushmills whiskey. On that same road, a year later, I bump into him, and he recognizes me in Belfast. And he runs over and he says, "You're the guy with the Bushmills." And I said, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Oh, I'm a professor at the university." And it's like, I thought this guy was a vagrant when I met him in New York.
Wow.
So those two things happened to me within the space of about 2 weeks on the same road in Belfast. And I just thought, this is weird. This is like statistically less possible than winning the lottery. And that combined with the history of the place and the feeling that I got when I was at these locations, I decided to stay and to see what else I could come up with. So I ended up getting a job as a audio visual tech for a little TV company in Belfast that was located in an old linen mill from the Victorian age. And this linen mill had the reputation for being seriously haunted. And anybody that knows Belfast, they had some political problems in the past. In July, these political problems are usually a lot more amplified because of certain traditions and things that go on in July. And sometimes traveling would be a bit touch and go. So there might be riots in parts of the city. So I ended up spending a couple of weeks living in this linen mill. And at night, when the sun goes down, is when all the stuff started happening. And I had all these experiences of doors slamming in my face and footsteps and other people would see full-blown apparitions. So I was always interested in that kind of thing anyway, but I thought this was the perfect laboratory while I was living here to kind of study this stuff. So got some recording equipment, and there was one morning I came down to the computer and there was actually an audio message left on the computer for me from an anomalous source. Wow. I kind of looked up on the internet and I thought, well, I should join a paranormal group and maybe some like-minded individuals and get some experience going out and investigating different locations. So we ended up getting a BBC TV series, which I was just supposed to be a contributor on one episode. And on that first episode, which was, I think it was like an old haunted prison that we were at, I ended up recording a few really good EVPs, and the commissioning editor for the BBC was watching the pilot episode, and he says, like, "We're really interested in this. I want to see more of this guy." So I ended up getting a cast position, and then it appeared in both 2 seasons of the show. And that's kind of what got me into doing this professionally.
Interesting. And what was the first investigation that you remember actively going on, Mark?
Well, before we to get the episodes of the TV show, it took a solid year of investigating every attic, castle, dungeon, hotel to get the final, short list of episodes. So we must have went to hundreds and hundreds of places. There was an old mansion called Rich Hill Castle, and that's kind of where we used as our base. And we would try out all of our technology there. We would try out our methods there, because this place was seriously haunted. And then the first one we did for the BBC was a place called Armagh Jail, which was an old prison that was abandoned. It hadn't been in prison in years. There was no electricity in the place. We were there in the middle of the night. The BBC had sealed the location off, and they insisted back then that we had a skeptic with us. And the skeptic's job was just pretty much to disagree with everything, and they didn't have any real qualifications or other than the fact that, something could walk right in front of you and they would say, oh, it's a shadow or something like that. Well, the skeptic decided that he wanted to spend some time on his own in one of the jail cells that was supposed to be haunted. So we had CCTV cameras with night vision, so he couldn't see anything. It was pitch black, but we could see him. And he sat in the corner of the cell, and we're monitoring these CCTV cameras. And he's being a bit of a smart aleck. He's saying, okay, if there's actually something here and you want to touch me or talk to me, go ahead and do that. And as soon as he said that, we could see a black shadow grab him by the neck, and he started gasping for air and went completely white, had to be rescued. And that was the last time he ever disrespected anything that he couldn't see with his own eyes.
Wow.
And that clip's on the internet. I think you can find that clip on the internet.
And was that the only time that you saw something physically interact with people in that kind of way, in a hostile kind of way?
That was the only. Well, no, there was another hostile location, but we weren't allowed to film that. That was actually a bit too hostile, and it's actually probably the most lively paranormal place I've ever been in my life. But the landowner that owned the house in question just did not want the publicity, did not want BBC cameras there. But when we were originally there doing research on the place and trying to shortlist it as a location, I had sometimes here when you go past a graveyard, they'll put these colored stones, these glossy stones on top of the grave. So we drove past the graveyard on the way to this location, and I stopped and grabbed a handful of these because I thought we could position these in different parts of this house with the lights off, and the infrared cameras you could see the glow on the stone. So if any of the stones moved, it would be easier to pick them up on the camera. Walked into this old abandoned cottage out in the middle of nowhere in the mountains in Northern Ireland, and stuck a few of these stones on a mantelpiece and stuck a infrared night vision camera on a tripod focused at these stones to watch it at all times. And I no sooner walked into the middle of the room, and one of the other guys had called out for, if there's anybody here, could you move something or say something? One of the stones vanished from the mantelpiece and flew past my head. I could feel the wind as it passed by my ear and crashed on the wall in front of me. It sounded like a shotgun blast. It went so fast. And our cameras were filming at 25 frames per second. So we calculated the time that it vanished from the mantelpiece and hit the wall. And there should have been at least one or two occasions where the glow of that stone would have been picked up on the camera, and there was nothing. There was like a bullet.
Wow.
And there was a few other things that happened in that location. People were just kind of roughed up a bit, pushed around a bit, and you could physically pushed by an unseen force. And it came down to the point where they wouldn't let us air it. It was too hostile. Wow. But those are the only two locations where anything's really been threatening.
Okay. And now when it comes to investigation time itself, Mark, you mentioned a few times the I guess the person asking questions, that kind of stuff. How frequent is it that is a part of the process? Is that just a part of the process whenever you're on camera, or is that a part of the regular process of investigation that you use?
I would say it's part of the regular process. We started using a medium named Marion Goodfellow, who's become a good friend of mine. And the mix of people I find is important, and the intentions of those people and the energy of those people. And with myself and Marion, we had a great mix, and things always seemed to happen when the two of us were together. And Marion, she can perceive these things in her mind. She can actually hear, the voices in her head. She can see the visions with her eyes. But then I started recording the same thing that she was perceiving at a lot of these locations. So Marianne would ask questions, and she would speak to whoever it was as if they were right there in front of her. Well, in her mind, they were right there in front of her. She could hear them and see them, but none of the rest of us could. And we find that you get a lot better results by interacting that way. And, she would ask a lot of questions, and she would get a lot of answers, and I would record those on audio equipment.
Okay. And of those recordings, things like that, what were your methods for capturing things? There is one clip that you sent of a pretty remarkable system that you assembled. I'll bring it up on screen here. The ITC Orchestra. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, especially working with the BBC, because it's visual. You have to come up with these things that are appealing for people to watch. And one of the ideas that I had was I always wanted to work with the acoustics of musical instruments. And so I started researching the frequency responses of violins and cellos, and I found that they should be capable of amplifying frequencies close to infrasound and ultrasound, which are two frequencies that are above and below our hearing range.
Yep.
But there's frequencies close to those that we should be able to hear technically if our ability to hear these were amplified a bit. So my mission was, or the thought that I had was, there's probably, it's like the headlights of your car at night. You can only see what's in front of you, but that doesn't mean there's not a whole other world around you. So I thought that there could be a lot of potential audio and visual phenomena that are maybe just outside of our visual and hearing range that we could maybe use tools to amplify and get a better look and a better listen to. And the violin was one of those things that I was driving past the music store, just dropped in, grabbed the violin, headed off to a location, stuck a couple of microphones and an amplifier to it. First time we tried it, it worked like a charm, and that on screen is the first time that we tried it.
That is a fascinating concept as an audio engineer, Mark. Fascinating concept, the idea of using the already resonant body of an instrument in that kind of way. Because we got into it a little bit before the show. I've gotten into it numerous times on the show. I firmly understand, especially when it comes to EVP, the original concept of EVP, the idea of a ghost being able to manipulate the weak magnetic field of a record head, and even the idea now, the way some of them were attained back in the day, sweeping through white noise frequencies, stuff like that. Not really sure about that. I'm not really sure about a lot of spirit boxes in that kind of way too, because you can pareidolia a lot of things together, sweeping through frequencies in that kind of way, picking up bits and pieces of stuff, all kinds of things. However, when you're talking about just pure resonant frequency, when you're talking about basically using an instrument as a contact microphone in that kind of way, where, like, yes, a ghost could vibrate the strings, that kind of stuff, and you can pick everything up. In that kind of way, you would be able to hear very, very subtle sounds in a room that you might not be able to pick up otherwise.
Electromagnetic frequencies and acoustics are really the only two ingredients that you need. You don't need supercomputers. You don't need the latest iPhone, which pretty much cancels the noise that you're trying to record anyway. And you don't need radios that scan frequencies back and forth and give you used car advertisements while you're trying to record EVPs. And I got the idea about the electromagnetic the first time I saw the Northern Lights here in Northern Ireland. You know, I was outside. We're not quite up as high as Iceland, where they can just see everything with their naked eye. We would get the Northern Lights here a lot, but when you look up in the sky, you can't actually see it. But if you take a picture, it immediately shows up on the camera. So it's just outside of our visual range, but close enough that it can be picked up on electronic equipment. And scientists don't argue with this. So EVP works the same way. There's voices and audio phenomena that's just outside of our hearing range, but when you record it onto an electronic device, it becomes audible.
Yeah. And once again, I've held for a long time that yes, I think that a ghost could definitely vibrate and move the wafer of quartz that's inside of a piezoelectric microphone, you know, that's in most digital recorders. And there's a far cry difference between like a field recorder and a handheld palm recorder. Even whenever it comes to humidity and the way that they act and the way that the microphones act with humidity on them, things like that. You get all kinds of wild artifacting from just plain old digital recorders because, yes, they do have built-in noise cancellation. They do have built-in filtering, that kind of stuff. As opposed to being able to manipulate, not just manipulate other things, but also manipulate the weak magnetic field going onto celluloid tape. I don't think that a ghost could manipulate the ones and zeros that are the digital assumption of the actual sound that is being recorded in that kind of way. Like the encoded sound. You know, even right now, like we are being recorded on a digital recorder. And while that shows a waveform and things like that, it is a digital 1 and 0 binary assumption of the actual sounds going into this microphone. It's not a physical recording. It's kind of the same as what's happening on a digital camera is not an actual photograph.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I like the old stuff. Some of the new stuff, I just think it's too complicated. It's too technical. You know, I've just never needed to go that far. I like to use things I find on the location. I've used seashells as acoustic chambers. They work quite well.
Sure.
I've used laser beams bounced off of panes of glass. That works really good at recording EVPs. You know, I got that idea from David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. I thought,
yeah.
That light show just blows me away. How could I incorporate that into recording paranormal activity? So we went to a location, got a pane of glass, got a laser pointer, fired it off, reflected it onto a photo cell, recorded that into an amplifier and a tape deck, and recorded voices from a pane of glass using a laser.
Yeah. And you know, that's just it. Using methodologies like that, using different means by which to capture stuff, I think is fascinating, Mark, because it really does bring about a different aspect of how to process this data and how to bring this data to bear in the community.
And anytime you get a chance to use your own creative spirit to do anything, I think that flips a switch to some sort of untapped resource of energy that kind of helps amplify this stuff. Because that the creatives, people that wonder about the human body having a soul, explain the creative spirit. That's the proof for me. Yeah. You know, the effect music has on us, the effect art has on us. You can't show a cow a painting from one of the greats and it's not going to have an emotional effect on it. Not to say that a cow doesn't have a soul, but it doesn't have the kind of soul that we have. You know, we can look at a painting and be touched by it. We can hear a song and be brought to tears, and if you either have a creative spirit to create, or you have a creative spirit to be affected by the art others create. But to me, that's proof of a soul, and that's the frequency I unlock anytime I try to come up with any kind of system to do this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's the idea of that expression of experience, and as I try to tell people all the time, whenever they're like, yeah, I don't really like that painting. I'm like, great, it did its job. Like art achieved. Like even your dislike and disdain of it proves the fact that it is art. You
don't have to like it.
Just the fact that it caused the conversation in your head validates it as art. So, and that's just it. When it comes to paranormal, when it comes to these things, especially whenever it comes to the locations there in Ireland and other places that have been around for hundreds and thousands of years, stuff like that. It is the idea of, how does it change the conversation? Does the conversation carry forward? Do experiences at some of these locations still carry on? Are there still experiences to this day in Ireland of, let's say, like leprechauns, things like that? Just with it being St. Patrick's Day, I think it would be remiss of us not to get into the people of the Fae, and things like that.
Yeah. Leprechauns are kind of a mascot of, it's kind of a modern day interpretation of ancient folklore of the fairy spirits and the elementals, and like there's not little green men smoking pipes running around the countryside, but there's a bit of truth that sparks all of these myths. And in terms of, are there creatures beyond our realm that run these parts of the countryside? Yeah, I can say that there are. There's strange lights all around me. There's sightings of things all around me. Maybe not leprechauns, but I can see where the leprechaun came from. And St. Patrick ridding the country of all the snakes. Well, every scientist knows there's never been snakes in Ireland, but that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about disconnecting energy lines. They're talking about getting rid of a prior way of thinking to pave the way for Christianity. I have a few problems with St. Patrick and a few problems with things that St. Patrick did.
Sure.
But that's what they're talking about. All around me, there's stone circles. There's Neolithic, and these people didn't just put these stones in a circle because they thought it looked cool. These were circuit boards. These were energy directors. These were portal openers. These were all sorts of things. And when Christianity came into effect, ridding Ireland of the snakes. Well, snakes represent knowledge, hidden knowledge, thinking.
That's right.
And that's what they did. And when you transcribe that into a storybook, it becomes the guy with the staff and the beard getting rid of the snakes of Ireland. But there's a whole big story behind that, and a whole hidden truth that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some of the stories of people of the Fae, things like that, and how they persist to this day.
Well, there's a lot of what they call fairy mounds. And these are mounds of earth that are thousands of years old that farmers will not touch. There could be a ring of trees growing around these mounds, and it could be in the middle of a field, and the farmers for hundreds of years to present day will plow that field, will plant that field and harvest that field, but they will not touch that mound, because a few instances where somebody did touch the mound, there's been disastrous things happen as a consequence. And I was speaking to a man maybe a year ago who has a bit of land beside his house that this guy had bought, and he took a bulldozer in and moved some of the earth from one of these mounds to build a shed or something. And he says, I kid you not, he came to me crying, and he said he looked out his window and one of his cows was levitating in the field.
Whoa.
And that was a result of tampering with one of these mounds. And to this day, they won't touch it. They call it troubled ground or cursed ground. And you can drive along the road. We did this earlier today, and there'll be just a big massive tree out in the middle of a field, and that tree will sit there until the day it either gets blown over or dies of old age. They will not cut it down. They will not tamper with it because of the consequences and things that happen when you do. The St. Patrick did a good job, but he didn't get everything.
Well, I mean, the effects are still there. The only difference is whether or not you have crushed the legends into submission, or I mean, as I say it all the time, as a Catholic seminarian, that's one of the things that we learned was all the ways that we came in and usurped local traditions and basically just absorbed them into the faith, and would be like, oh yeah, well, you have a celebration at that time, so do we. Hey, look at that. It's real easy to join. See, you don't even miss your parties.
All the places they build the churches they're not by chance. Those churches are built on ground that's already sacred. These St. Patrick's sacred wells, they were already sacred before they put the St. Patrick name on them. You look at a Catholic mass and it's completely a pagan ripoff of the altar and everything.
Well, I mean, it's truly a Jewish high service, is what it is. It's like if you've ever been to Jewish temple, anything like that's exactly what it is. It follows the exact same cadence. It has the exact same parts. The only difference is we read from the New Testament. At some
and your
point.
Christmas tree, that's put up every year. That's a pagan tradition. Straight
pagan.
Even the day that it's put up.
Exactly. And that's just it. These things, and that's some of what we talk about with Jared Murphy in our pre-recorded segment coming up next, is the idea that we lose these traditions so fast. The example that I give regularly is I am Cajun by birth. We'll be having my family reunion coming up soon. There are maybe 3 people at that reunion that speak Cajun.
Wow.
That was an indigenous language to this country at one point, that when it was basically beaten out of kids at school, they were put in the corner for speaking it, things like that. It becomes a fact of a culture, and the language disappears. And it's interesting how that happens. And once again, with that go many other stories, go many other traditions that are there, that even though those traditions may have been attempted to be wiped out, it doesn't mean that the occurrences that caused those traditions have stopped.
And I think that would be maybe one of the differences in Ireland and a lot of places, is a lot of those traditions hung on, and a lot of them were incorporated into the modern religions, and you get a bit of both worlds. And even some of these ancient sites, I've brought remote viewers in to investigate some of these ancient sites, and these remote viewers, all they get is a code number. They have no idea I'm talking about Ireland. They have no idea I'm talking about an ancient stone monument, but yet they're able to. I sent them back 2,500 years at one location just to tell me what was going on there, and some of the stuff that they come up with was pretty mind-blowing. We're talking UFOs and people in cloaks, and yet you're able to, by a code number, describe the countryside and the terrain and the stone monuments. And if you get all that stuff right, why am I going to discount the UFO that you're seeing over the top of it?
Yeah. And with that in mind, what are some of the other paranormal things, aside from ghosts, aside from people of the Fae, things like that? What are some of the other local legends, traditions, things like that, Mark?
Well, about 5 miles to the east of me, I've got what they've called APRTV's grave. And APRTV was a vampire. He was a dwarf of the time. This was hundreds of years ago. But he got the vampire legend because he was a fierce, evil warlord of a dwarf who was killed and come back to life. And they they apparently killed this guy 2 or 3 times, and he kept coming back to life. And they got advice from a druid priest on what they're meant to do with the guy's body the next time they managed to kill him to keep him from coming back. And so they were told to bury him upside down, put a big standing stone on top of the grave, and that should do the trick. Well, that standing stone is still there to this day. This is a few miles away from the house. Local legend, all the locals know about it. They won't go near it, they won't touch it. And it was the inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. We've a guy at the university here, Queen's University, who has investigated this extensively and looked at the timings, looked at the history, and found that Bram Stoker was in the area, writing and taking research and inspiration from the local place, and actually used the name. When you translate the name, it translates something that sounds sort of Dracula. The APRTV translation is kind of a Dracula, and so there's so many things that just fall into place that they do actually think that this place 5 miles from my house was the inspiration for that story.
Wild. And go ahead.
There's a town called, right, so Northern Ireland's where I live.
Okay.
And to give people an idea, Northern Ireland, the country, is the same size as the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So this is not a big place. This is a place the size of a big American city. But this little place has all of the ingredients of the great supernatural things that we have in the United States. We have the equivalent of the Roswell UFO crash. We have Bigfoot sightings. We have a vampire. We have ancient stone monuments, UFO sightings. And for such a small place, imagine all those things going on in Austin.
Yeah.
That's how condensed and ancient and paranormal this place is. And the locals just, they don't even give it a second thought. It's just like everyday stuff to them. 1956, the next town over from me, there was a farmer who, him and his wife were having lunch, and a egg-shaped UFO lands in his field. And this thing is about waist height. Now, there's police reports for all this, and I'm getting this information from the police reports. This farmer goes out, and he's like, what the heck is that? So the only thing he knows to do is to pick this thing up and take it to the police station, because there was an American military base not far from there, and he thought this must have been some of their technology that's fallen out of an airplane or something like that. So he goes over and he grabs this egg-shaped UFO, picks it up, and he's carrying it to the police station, which is about half a mile away. But to get there, he has to leave his field, go through a hedge, and get onto a road. So to go through this hedge, he sets the thing down on the ground while he climbs through the hedge, and his plans were to reach back through and grab it. As soon as he put it down, the thing shoots up into the air, leaves a contrail behind it, and vanishes off into space. And so he goes ahead and goes to the police station, fills out the police report, and the chief constable of the police station put a note in the police report. I know this man. He's not a drunk. He doesn't drink. He's a God-fearing Christian. And if he says he saw that thing shoot up into the sky, this police force believes that that's what happened.
Wow. And, when it comes to that, we regularly talk to police officers. We talk to all kinds of law enforcement. Now, I am a huge fan. There's a group out now, UAPPD. Hey, guys. Marianne, Rob, and others that are out there that are former first responders. Things like that. Are the cases of first responders being involved with sightings, things like that, as common over there as they are here, Mark?
Well, you wouldn't really. First responders here, because of the security issues and there's still a slight threat of terrorist activity in Northern Ireland occasionally.
Sure.
You wouldn't get an openness from police forces like you would in a lot of places. Like they would never go on a radio show or even identify themselves as a police officer. But I would get most of my information from them. I have a stack of police reports here at the minute of big cat sightings in Northern Ireland.
Interesting.
When I say big cat, I'm talking like panther, mountain lion sized cats.
Yeah.
Northern Ireland doesn't have any predators. There's nothing here larger than a fox. That's the apex predator here is a fox. There never has been big cats here, but yet these police reports, when I look at them, I see 4 people in the same location. None of them know each other. None of them know that the other 3 had spotted anything like this, and they all say the same thing in the report. We saw a big cat running through the trees. It looked like a panther. Or we saw a big cat running across the field. It looked like a mountain lion. So we're trying to figure out, where are these big cats coming from? Because there are big cats in folklore, Irish folklore. So is there a supernatural aspect to these, or are they somehow smuggled into the country and then turned loose? But the amount of reports I have from the police, it can't be ignored. They're here.
Well, and when you say that there are stories of large cats in Irish folklore, what are those stories?
I don't know the exact story. I just know that in various points of ancient Irish folklore, phantom black cats appear, and they have some sort of a symbolic meaning in regards to the folklore. So this is something I'm freshly investigating at the minute. I'll know more about this in the future, but I wanted to see if there were any accounts of big cats in folklore, and I found that there were in a few different areas of it. So I've kind of got that angle now that I have to figure out, are these actual flesh and blood big cats that people are seeing, or are these the cats of ancient folklore that are popping up again? Because we're in the solar maximum at the minute. And I've found that throughout history, these creatures appear a lot more whenever the solar activity is amplified, and they kind of go away again whenever you're back into the solar minimum. And there was another guy at the university that traced this back and did a thesis on it that I've been reading through it, and all the tales of dragons and all the tales of mythical creatures almost always happen during the solar maximum.
Wow, that is a fascinating piece of data to add to things. It's especially whenever you consider just the association of frequency, things like that, Mark, and the idea of parallel places, that kind of stuff. The concept of portals, all kinds of things comes to mind.
And when you see all the stone monuments, you see the stone circles, you see the standing stones. They were working with energy. They were definitely routing energy for some purpose. So, were they tapping into frequencies that made these things real? Are these things in folklore actually witness accounts, rather than the result of a very good...
Even the spirals all over the stone circles, things like that is normally a symbol of the sun itself, the spiral. So, yeah. And, with that in mind, what kind of, especially with cryptids, things like that. You mentioned Bigfoot a minute ago. There is a large kerfuffle going on right now, coming out of Austin, Texas, during South by Southwest, about this new documentary capturing Bigfoot, where it claims that the Patterson-Gimlin film from so long ago is absolutely faked, that it was part of a documentary that they were trying to shoot, all kinds of things. I have yet to see it. I don't think it's available outside of that screening that just happened yet. But what are the stories there? Because I have a rote phrase that I use on this show all the time, Mark, and it is, I believe that there is a large hominid creature roaming the woods of North America and beyond. I also believe that there is something else that is fully willing to use the tropes of our mind as a point of consent through which to enter this dimension. So the Bigfoot sightings there, how far back do they go, and how frequent are they?
Well, the Bigfoot sightings here, there is a big, hairy hominid creature in Irish folklore. I think it's called the woodboose. And these reports go back thousands of years as well. and they were put to, you know, an overactive imagination and put to folklore stories until people started spotting these things out in the countryside. Now, you can convince me that a flesh and blood creature 10 foot tall could possibly live in the Pacific Northwest, because I've been there and I've seen how vast those wildernesses are. But whenever you see something like that here in this country, when there's virtually no trees left, no forest left, and it's a small island, well, there's literally no possibility that this could be a result of evolution. So it has to be paranormal. The last report that I heard was from a military man, a retired military man, an avid hiker. He'd hiked every peak in the country, and he was hiking in what we call the Sparran Mountains, a few miles away from me. Spotted a big 10-foot tall hairy creature, you know, walking the fence line up the hill from where he was. And this is a man that is familiar with the wilderness. He's familiar with military tactics. The government, you know, they put their faith in this guy for decades to keep the country safe. So there's no reason to not believe what he's saying, and no reason to not believe. He wouldn't even give his real identity when he made the report, because he knew what that would result in. But the people I spoke to who took the report said that he's legit. He is the real deal, and he's perfect sound mind and body, and he saw this thing. There have been other reports in the same area of other people seeing this thing as well. So if it's not the result of millions of years of biology and evolution, where did it come from and why is it there? It's got to be paranormal.
Well, and once again, because this is a conversation that we have, and just so you know, folks, yes, we will be getting King Gerhard on to talk about this documentary once we have both seen it, things like that. We've already had that conversation, but the conversation that we typically have with any cryptozoologist, King Gerhard, Adam Davies, Lyle Blackburn, all kinds, is can the creature that you're talking about live, thrive, survive, breed in the area that you're talking about? You know, is there ample shelter for it? Is there ample food for it to forage? Things like that. And when you're talking, yes, the Pacific Northwest, the thick woods of East Texas are a huge sighting spot, Mark, all kinds of things. But that is not the dense forestry that exists on the island of Scotland.
No.
Is there dense forestry like that on the island of Scotland in that kind of way?
There's not here. There's not in Ireland. There's not in Scotland. There's just not the habitat that would be required for a biological result of evolution to live and survive. There's not the food source. So that's what gets me about the Bigfoot community, is you've got one crowd of people here that think it's a flesh and blood evolved creature. You've got another crowd over here, and the crowd that believes it could be something supernatural are usually the ones that have actually seen it, you know. And I'm sitting here in Ireland telling you that whatever they're seeing in this country is impossible, that it could be the result of evolution, because we just don't have the components for that thing to survive that way and to become undetected for so long. So it has to be something that sometimes is somewhere else, sometimes is here as a result of some sort of portal, some sort of energy fluctuation. And in the folklore, there are giants. Everything here is named after a giant. We have giants' graves. We have the giants' causeway. These giants when you see a drawing of them, they look like what a Bigfoot looks like. So I think what we're seeing today could be the same thing that spawned these myths and legends of giants, you know, from years gone by.
Interesting.
And if only we could get into the Smithsonian's basement, we could possibly see one.
Well, and you know, even whenever it comes to Stonehenge and the circles of Merlin, things like that, that was the story behind them, was that the stones were carried from Ireland over by giants, things like that. So, yeah, there is a long-held tradition of these things. And once again, the idea that at least Sasquatch as we know him. Now, don't get me wrong. There's Yowie, there's Yeti, there's all kinds, folks. But once again, you're talking about large, vast areas that something like you could smooth get lost in Australia and nobody ever find you, ever. It's a whole continent. But something the size of Ireland, that'd be
if you get
that'd
lost
be different.
here, you just pick a direction and walk there, and eventually you're going to hit water. You know? It's not that big of a place.
Yeah, so the idea of this being a remnant species that's kicking around and has ample place to hide, has ample place to shelter, has ample place to breed successfully, things like that, not necessarily the case.
And all these giants' graves that we have in this country are all vacant. There's nothing in them. So something's taken whatever was buried there and moved it somewhere else. And they're built the same way with stone walls and stone caps as the ones in South America and the ones in other places that they've found that people reported to actually see bodies in. You know, the archaeologists reported that, you know, they did find some with bodies in them. The ones here don't have any bodies in them, but they're built exactly the same way as all the other ones, you know, in places that weren't supposed to be communicating or coming in contact with each other. You know, there's an ancient burial mound not far from here where they actually found Egyptian artifacts. They found a Barbary ape skull in 2 mounds in Ireland that predate any historic contact that Africa and Ireland were supposed to have had. And it's like, you know, well, how did that stuff get there? Where did these Egyptian artifacts come from? And that's something that's not even speculation. That's historically documented fact that 2 of these mounds in Ireland, they found Barbary ape skulls.
That is fascinating. And you know, something that literally we'll be getting into in the next segment with Jared Murphy, the idea that these cultures long ago were connected. We have forgotten these connections time and time again, Mark. Much like the stories, the legends, things like that for some reason we forget them, we push them aside, but it doesn't mean that the occurrences stop. Even though we have culturally pushed aside, even though we have religiously pushed aside the validity of these things, it doesn't mean that they stop happening. No. Which in and of itself, I think, points more to the validity of the paranormal in that kind of way. You know,
I've went the opposite way you're supposed to go. Usually when you're a kid, you believe in all this stuff. And then as you get older, you know, you kind of grow up and you forget about it. I've went the opposite. The older I get, the more confused I become.
Yeah.
Because you visit these places and you see that this stuff's actually real.
Well, and it's interesting because once again, former Catholic seminarian. I immediately go to the Nicene Creed as just proof of it. Like it's the first pillar that's mentioned is I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, all things seen and unseen. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a lot more unseen than seen in the whole universe.
The Bible's the biggest collection of paranormal stories ever written.
Exactly.
And there's giants in it. You know, there's...
Yep. Giants.
Well, with a name like Jared Murphy, I'm sure he'll know a little bit about Ireland, since it's the perfect person to have on for St. Patrick's Day.
Well, and I want to thank you for your time tonight. I want to thank you for your candid candor and conversation. I would love to have you on again and again to dig more into these topics, because once again, I think it's fascinating to see the cultural root behind some of these things. You know, it's something that I bring up regularly, even living here in Texas, the idea of the Dogman Triangle here in Texas. When you start looking at cryptozoology through a cultural lens, and you start considering the cultures of the people that settled Central Texas, the French, the German, things like that. They had lupine cryptids in their history. They had lycanthropy, that kind of stuff in their history. Beast of Gévaudan, stuff like that. So the idea that would come along with the settlers and be here, and get mixed into the lore, and people just forget the root. People forget the origin of it and where it came from, and it just becomes the local tradition. No different than the Rougarou in Louisiana for my Cajun people out there. Like that tracks straight back to France.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm planet wide now, so Texas is definitely on my hit list. I'll look you up when I'm over there, and we'll go find that pterodactyl they see along the Rio Grande.
Oh, you do that, buddy. You do that. Absolutely. Please do. Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go to pick up your book. Let everybody know where they can go to find you on shows, all that kind of good stuff, Mark.
Well, my website is marklcowden.com. You can get information on books or adventures or anything I'm up to on that. The book it's a 15-year anniversary this year, so there's going to be a re-release, a collector's item re-release. It's going to have a lot of extra content and some extra chapters in it, and that should be out in the next month or two. It'll be available in Amazon, Kindle, all those places where people go and get books. And yeah, anything I'm up to will be on the website.
All right. Well, man, thank you so much for your time once again. We will be sending links out, all that kind of good stuff. You have yourself, I guess, a great morning.
I'm going to bed.
We will be in touch. Absolutely. Cool. Man, what a great conversation. And, it really does ring true, folks. We forget our own humanity so many times over. We have a very, very short attention span when it comes to humanity and history. And we will be getting into that with our friend Jared Murphyt from RkeoX right after this, folks.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back from that quick break. If you're a user of CBD products like I am, stop on by True Hemp Science today. Christopher Lynch and True Hemp Science make some amazing products using a spigeric process. They use every part of the hemp plant, everything from seeds, stems, buds, leaves, all of it, roots. All of it is used, reused, combusted, and reused to provide an amazing spigeric product in the end. Their website has all the details about all of them, complete with terpene profiles and everything. Across the country, it is hands down the best CBD products that I have found in any dispensary. Stop on by, check them out, truehempscience.com. CuriousRealm.com is the website that you want to go to. Curious7 is the code that you want to use to save 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more and get a free edible on the way out the door. Our guest in this segment is our good friend and founder of RkeoX, Jared Murphyt. We will be talking about his book, It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us. This is one of my favorite topics in the world, Jared. Welcome back to the show. How are you this evening, my friend?
Really great. How are you?
Always good, man. Always good. And you know, there have been some rough times in the world lately, but to know that we are still able to connect in this kind of way, that we are still able to have these kinds of deep conversations, I think is something that society and the world needs to try to remember and focus on. That these are the things that we need to be able to talk about to move humanity forward. So thank you for taking the time tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Again, it's been so fun, the adventure of all this over all this time. And yeah, this is stuff people, sometimes people get hung up, I've realized, on the word history, or that it's about knowing our past, like it's a factual thing, which it is at one level. It's so fascinating to know. And on the other hand, there's these things we're all navigating, our health and our consciousness. And that history is, I think, part of the focusing point. It's not just a factual, you know. I feel like I'm hearing the Beatles in my head go, there was they counted how many thousands of holes in blanked and Lancashire, and they had to count them all.
Yeah. Well, and also just the fact of, you know, history has been written and rewritten numerous times. You know, that was one of the, we unfortunately did not get to have our conversation with Graham Phillips, but that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about, especially with Merlin, King Arthur, things like that. Is like that history in and of itself has been written and rewritten, you know, and we're looking at the same thing right now in society, where like history has been rewritten in some places. It's pretty fascinating to see that, like, we're right amongst it, but it takes less than a generation. And that's one of the points that I bring up all the time whenever you and I talk, whenever we talk about ancient civilizations, whenever we talk about how quick a society can forget. I'm a Cajun. And right now there is an active movement to teach the Cajun language in school, in junior highs and elementaries, things like that, because everybody from my grandmother's generation spoke it. But they were also punished in school because it was the language of the ignorant. So you learn English, you learn English, you learn English is what they were told. You don't speak Cajun. They spoke Cajun at home. My mom understands a little bit. She speaks maybe 4 or 5 phrases, you know, but the fact that that entire language that is unique and indigenous to America is almost dead like within a generation. It doesn't take thousands of years to forget. It doesn't. It takes like 50, man. Like within our lifetimes, this language has almost gone dead.
It's crazy that you get to the Caribbean, you got Creole, and you got all these languages that are really, and there's a history behind them. At the same time, they're spoken. And Minnesota, where I'm from, there is it happened all over the country, but all the indigenous, all the Native American peoples that were forced to be in schools to forget their languages, forget their culture, forget their, to try to wipe out. And, I was in Arizona with Rex from Leak Project, and we were looking for the G.E. Kincaid cave, if you remember, a couple of years ago. Yeah. And I thought, I was a kid when I was at Mesa Verde and these rock dwelling ruins. And I thought, I haven't been there since I was a kid. So I haven't told you this, but in what I find quite unfortunate, I won't say diabolical. I wanted to say diabolical and I was going to self-edit because let's not get people will shut down the minute you say, I won't say the words for the trigger words. But what I found, Chris, was they had left, for the sake of, in quotes, preservation, they were now letting the weeds, these wrangly bushes, grow into these walls of these indigenous ruins that are going to be destroyed by the roots and destroyed by the trees. And they're like, well, we're preserving it. I'm like, in what way? When I was a kid, you guys kept this stuff pristine. Yeah. And you walked up and there was just, you look up the wall and all you saw was the ruins. And now you're letting the bushes and the trees and the things grow over some of the lower things that were created, and they're being demolished by nature itself. And I'm not saying we have to preserve every old ruin, but it seems pretty in line with the erasure of our past, of our histories, of our. It's hard to watch. Well, under the guise of preservation.
It's interesting because we just had Dennis Stone on all of about a month ago. And I love Dennis Stone. I love Dennis Stone because I could literally talk for about 5 minutes in that program. His knowledge of that location and everything about it. Like, I normally have about 4 questions written out that I'm going to ask, and I can wind him up and let him go.
Yeah.
And it's like he's recording a documentary about it. It's so great because his knowledge is vast and huge about it. Yes. And one of the things that we talk about is the fact that they eventually got to a point with the structures there that they stopped rebuilding the structures because, you didn't have a picture of what it looked like before. So some of what you're doing, this was like back in the 50s, things like that. Yeah. Where they had rebuilt some of them, but it's one of those like, well, you don't know if that's actively how it looked.
So you're totally right. It's
and that was only a couple of the structures there. But what they do is make sure that they are maintained. They make sure that they're maintained the best possible, that they maintain the way that they were found, everything else. So the fact that, this location is letting these basically native ruins go to ruin is sad. It's sad. And I'm sure a lot of it has to do with budget and things like that. But it's also like, there's a difference between preserving it in its original state and like letting it go to seed and that kind of it reminds me of Fletch. I don't know if you're a Fletch fan, but Fletch 2, where he inherits the mansion and he drives up to it and it's dilapidated and the real estate agent's like, you're out like to keep things in their natural state. He's like, did she ever comb her hair? Like,
exactly.
Weeds growing out of the walls and stuff like that. But that's just it. It's one of those we can forget rapidly and let things go to seed and literally get to the point. One of the stories I've heard in the last couple years is the story of a Polish town that went to do some construction, things like that, did some ground penetrating radar and found a mass grave. Nobody knew what this mass grave was, where it came from. Ended up, it was part of a concentration camp. And they had killed like a mass number of people. And the whole town just like decided to never speak of it again. And the people that were part of it and were there when it happened died off. And they never spoke of it. They never told their children. So their children had children and brought them up. And underneath this entire town was like a mass grave of thousands of people, not like tens of thousands of years old or something like that, like within people's lifetimes. So we forget this stuff rapidly.
I agree. There is, you've seen it. I saw it in South Africa with the stone circles. Michael Tellinger kind of brought a lot of, there was British officers that brought up the stone circles over 100 years ago, and they counted thousands and they counted tens of thousands and they counted 100,000. Then it's like, well, there's like millions of them. And these stone circles are either the foundations of buildings, and they're not like they're like, to give everyone an idea, if you have a ranch style or a rambler style home, these are circles that are big enough for your home to be in the middle of. And the stone circles look like they had entrances, and like maybe they were the foundation, like the one in the middle there. And they look like they're just like a pattern, but what they are, when you get there, they look like they were walled. They look like they protected you, or some people say, oh, they were for cattle. But there are millions of these things. The last count officially was like 500,000, but there are millions of them. And what you can't see, which I did see, we used a drone and we were able to see that those stone circles are connected by kind of like walkways of the same rock. And these are, Chris, they're everywhere. We explored for a month. Michael and I went out and we were droning and looking for many square miles. And so it was stone circle connected by, if you could only look from aerially and a certain time of the year, you could see because the brush would be low because there's wildfires, but there's also paper mills. And I'm going to get to the part where there's some of the greatest paper mills for all of us to have paper. We need paper. And these paper mills produce in this area of South Africa, and those stone circles, many of them, the ones that you can only see from the air, they frequently are being built and seeded up by these paper mill trees. And they're destroying, and there are millions, and these stone circles are connected by these kind of walkways that seem to be road width, and you only see them from the air. And it's like on the ground, it looks like there's just rocks. But when you look from the air, and what's crazy about them is that they figure they're 7,000 to 9,000 years old. But here's the thing. They're all in these like rolling mountainous areas where there's a whole bunch of stone circles, and there seems to be these rock roadways connecting stone circle to stone circle, like maybe they had walls at one point, but then they'll hit a creek bed, and it's clear that the stone circle and the road or the barrier wall that was connecting one circle to another side, it's clear that they were built before there was water. And you can see that the creeks have come after these stone circles and these roadways were abandoned. And they go over acre and acre and acre, and they run right in these ruins, run right under these massive tree farms, paper tree farms. So they're growing these trees to create paper. So they're fast growing, but they get to be over 5 to 8 inches, and they go fast, but they're building them on acres and acres of these, I don't know, millions of square miles of acres of ruins, and they're being decimated by trees. Same thing as Göbekli Tepe. I know Jimmy from Bright Insight got in trouble for pointing it out that they're building rows, and they just tore them out, but they were building rows and rows of trees on the ruins. And here we are in Arizona. They're letting the trees in the scrub, and so you got ruins that are maybe only 1,000 or 2,000. Well, look, maybe 1,000 to 5,000 years old. Maybe they're Anasazi. Maybe they're really old. But then you have Göbekli Tepe, tens of thousands of years old. And you have these stone circles and these connecting kind of road pathways that are at least 7,000 to 10,000 years old. That could be as old as Dennis Stone's Stonehenge and older. And yet again, all over the earth, not that there's the word conspiracy attached, but there's a systematic work of these trees. Why put the olive trees to begin with, as you're pulling it up, why would you do this unless there's this concerted effort, language, Creole, Cajun, the folklores and then like your point of a mass grave from less than 100 years ago, just 50 years of a generation not speaking on it. What do we do with a history that's blatantly in our face by millions of acres all over the earth? Versus, who, and you could say there's a different group that is, well, there's a group religiously or politically that wants, Cajun to go away. And, or you could say there's a group about indigenous people, and there's a modern history to the origins of America or the origins of a country, or the first explorer from Britain to go to a place, or from Portugal to discover Brazil. You can't have it's literally called the Bay of Amphora Jars. I put it in It's Not Aliens, Worse It's Us in the book, which, yes, that was the original book. A new one will come out. I keep saying that, but it's true. But in that book, I'm discussing the fact that the Bay of Amphora Jars is thousands. They don't even know. And they said 1 or 2 Roman ships got off course and off in this bay, there's all these amphora jars, which Romans used to transport wine and grains and seeds and you name it. They put them in jars. They didn't have cardboard boxes. They didn't have metal boxes. They had amphora jars. So there's a whole bay of amphora jars, which it's documented that the Brazilian Navy buried some of it to, in quotes, protect it. And the reality is that the Portuguese were supposed to discover Brazil. The Romans are not supposed to have an open trade route. The Phoenicians are not supposed to be coming to America. And the reality is that the complex history of humanity and even the last 5,000 years shows a history that people are extremely either uncomfortable with, or I sound like Dennis Stone right now, don't I? Well, you could just drink coffee, have some cereal.
That's the idea, buddy.
Yeah. And boom goes the hour.
Well,
right?
but quite literally, when you're talking about these forgotten trade routes, when you're forgotten, you get kind of like the idea of Hawaiians having histories of going to Antarctica.
Yeah. Hawaiians, all their ruins, all their big megalithic ruins that are underwater in Hawaii that show the same writings.
Even the fact of cocaine and traces of coca being found in Egyptian mummies. There is only one place in the world that coca grows.
Yep.
Only one place.
Yep. There's one place, and the Romans clearly, it wasn't just the Romans traveling to and from Central and South America. There's no way.
Yeah. And is it possible? Heck yeah, it's possible.
Yes.
I mean, that's how people got to Rapa Nui. For also known as Easter Island, folks. You look at where that is; it is way down at the edge of the world, man. There ain't nothing near it. Nothing near it.
I mean, Chile takes claim to Easter Island, but it's way off the coast. It's way in the middle of nowhere. And again, we base our entire history on what's above water. Yet when we speak to human origins is now pushed back. Okay, Michael Cremo and I are doing a new podcast, and we've been recording. We just did episode 2 for the Forbidden Archaeology. So the man who writes Forbidden Archaeology, we're doing a podcast called The Forbidden Archaeologist. It's going to be me and Michael, and we just recorded about how modern academic acceptance that modern anatomically correct humans are 500,000 years old, which is a joke, which is great. Positive. We moved from 250, 300,000 when you and I were young to, hey, humans are 500,000. When we have bones, I say that because there's anatomically correct humans shown to be back 1.3 to 60, 100 million years old. There's clear indications of humans here for a long time.
Yeah.
And the routes that we traded and moved, and these Polynesians and these Native American, the Phoenicians, are moving around the world.
Yeah.
On landmass, if we just take, let's not go 500,000 years, but if we go even 8,000, look at Doggerland.
Yep.
It's a great image for everyone to look at, because Doggerland is all of Scotland, all the way to France, with a massive amount of land. And so when you say humanity is 500,000 years old, and when you say we were going Phoenicians and we're going to the Great Lakes to mine copper and Doggerland, and when you look at the size of it, and there's a chart of up there in the left corner of the graph, it says what dark to light areas were above water. And we're looking at an area that's 16,000 years ago. If we want to find where humans lived on coasts. And you look at those coasts, and those are kilometers off of the existing, I say kilometers for shout out to Europe, but the spaces where we look for human antiquity are not in the middle highlands of what is currently Scotland and Ireland, but on these lowlands, on these coastlines, on these tributaries of these rivers and streams that are showing that if I was a human 16,000 years ago, I'm living on that coast. And if I was living on that coast, what's the coastline 100,000 years ago? Yeah. So anyway, just saying that we're in disbelief of the obvious travel of cocaine to Egypt. Hello. We got Eric Clapton 5000 BC doing cocaine for Egyptian kings. I mean, can you imagine it? Cocaine. They just...
Well, and specifically when you talk about the fact of it being found in mummies, because the mummies were, people of royalty, people of ilk, things like that. Same thing. Coca was treated the same way by the Andean people and stuff like that in Peru. The fact of it was for the king and for the royalty, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, they knew how to party.
Used every day as far as coca goes. I mean, heck, our vice president used coca. Because he was climbing in the Andes. They make a tea out of it, and it helps you breathe the thin air better. You mix it with chemicals, things like that, you get cocaine. But just the fact of that substance being and proven to not be cross-contamination, things like that, it's fascinating to see, and when you start looking, especially at even in South America, when you start looking at the surgeries that took place amongst indigenous people, that kind of stuff, the implantation of jewels into teeth, that kind of stuff.
The Paracas skull with the metal plate in it that is so advanced, and the skill and the shape of it, it looks like something out of Star Trek. That Paracas skull metal plate in that head not only shows a complex, what blows my mind there for everyone, if you see this image of this skull having this intricately almost Starfleet Academy, not exactly shaped like the insignia, but a extremely the surgicalness of the plate. And here's my one. It's an elongated skull. And for everyone listening, it has a different suture line. This is not cranial deformation. This is not squeezing a head to make it big. It has a single suture line that almost connects with the metal plate at the top at the point. It doesn't have a normal suture line, which is unusual and not classically human. And then it also has the forum magnum, which is where the arteries go in under your chin. There are two main arteries that go into your skull to feed your brain, and the location of the forum magnum are completely different in those skulls. So now you're looking at a surgery. For everyone listening, here's your tidbit: metallurgy. What is the chemical and metallurgic compound of that metal plate? No one's looked. No one's asked. That complexity of placing that in a human skull, let alone one that doesn't have the anatomy of a human as we know them, but that human elongated skull has a metallurgy placed into its skull that was healed, surgically done, and then we don't know the compounds. Now, we know today the complexity of, there are altars all across Europe that are over 1,000 years old. There is metallurgy that shows that the ancients, we're talking back to the Greeks, there is, cell phone technology. There is non-moving parts in here. There's metals in here.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's all really tiny. There is proof, and I put this in Not Aliens in my book, that there is, they knew how to thin metal so thin that it exceeds the technology in our current phones and our current computing. They had the ability to not just coat an altar, but they had an ability to thin metal to nanotechnology, nanofilm.
Yep.
That is a high technology. Using the metallurgy to put in a human plate in a skull to, the Antikythera device.
Yep.
The reality is that we are, you know what? I should finish the thought, but
go ahead.
Just threw up Antikythera device, 2,000 years old, first computer. Something, Chris, people ask me, why did I get into this, or how did I get into this? One of the things that was a benefit of me growing up Catholic is that I had questions, and the questions were met with, okay, well, here's an answer. Here's an answer. But very quickly it would be, have more faith and have faith. And then I realized my real questions started where you stopped answering my questions. Right.
Yeah.
And that line of questioning has led me to early in life. When you see an article that says world's first computer, I understand it. You're selling newspapers, you're selling an ad, you're selling clicks, you're selling an interest in our news story. However, what did just irritate me, it like upset my stomach. Like not only is it a lie, it feels like a lie, even though it's not a lie. The misleading statement of world's first computer.
Now, granted, an abacus is a computer.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Like, you're just moving it. The only difference is this was a wind-up, like, gear-operated abacus, basically, made for calculating specific things. So that's why it's computing. That's what they mean by computer. Like,
well, and here's the thing. It's like...
It's kind of like saying UFO.
Well, exactly. Well, and my point is that the Antikythera device, it's like it shouldn't have survived because of the mechanics of what it's made out of. So because it's the only one found, it's the first. And I'm like, really? Like the most you have the balls to say that it's the first. It's the only one you ever found. And you're like, well, it shouldn't have existed. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's the only one ever found. So do you think they only built one based on the complexity of that device? Do you think that somebody just sat down and filed out and made one brass?
And honestly, just as a circuit designer, I'm here to tell you, you get decent at designing a circuit, things like that, but mistakes are made when you're soldering. Mistakes are made when you're printing a board. Mistakes are like things happen. Revisions happen. Why did I put this here? I could have put it like this and it would have totally changed the layout and given me an extra 1/4 inch of space. Like revisions happen in an invention. So the fact that somebody one-offed the Antikythera mechanism, the Antikythera device, I don't think so. Like you said, I think that there would have probably been a revision or two. There probably would have been at least somebody else, because like there's the whole hypothesis that it was maybe used to calculate the time of the Olympic Games. So if that's the case, then other people needed one too, so they knew to send their people to the Olympics.
On the dialogue of one, there was more than one device, and this is a good point. Yes. Here's another point, though, that you just made that we don't even think. It's so subtle. It's, they're Greeks. Well, what did they know? Well, they knew when the games were, and they knew how. So you're ignorant to the fact that they made something so complex and advanced, and you're so ignorant that in general, and I'm talking about the assumption that they had to figure out when the games were. That's our assumption. Not that this is a much more complex society with complex machinery. That this is not only just a one-up, but what other machines were they creating? And if this thing could calculate that, you don't think they would have figured out other complex computations, and it only related to the things that we project onto that society.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, no, and I mean, a prime example of that is quite literally, I just brought it up from Northwestern University, nanomaterials, man. Early Rome, you look at the Lycurgus cup, and it's a cup that when shifted into a certain light and into a certain direction, the color of the glass physically changes because of the nanoparticles of gold inside of the glass. And same thing, we talk about this with Gretchen Cornwall. Hey, Gretchen, hope you're well. But the fact of Knights Templar knew and used nanotechnology, that's why it took so long for us to be able to replicate their red in stained glass, because they were using gold nanoparticles in red, silver nanoparticles in yellow. And
self-repairing Roman concrete. Yeah. No one ever talks about that. They just said, we think we figured it out. It's self-repairing.
We just figured it out. Like, just figured out the formula for Roman concrete, like in the last 2 years.
But it's self-repairs. So that, and again, did the Romans find it, adapt it? Did they learn the recipe from piles of it that was left because the Greeks found piles of it left? Because the Greeks, again, the entire Roman Greek culture is built on megalithic ruins, and the chemistry of this concrete. And again, there was just an article out, Chris, about scientists crack the self-replicating feature. Specifically, there's long-lasting Roman concrete. It has no Roman, it has no rebar in it, so there's no secondary support. The concrete itself builds a building that doesn't fall down like that dome that you were just looking at. But also, they found that it has self-healing properties. It's able to fill itself in, and that organic chemistry, that's complex nanoengineering. And it seems like the cups, the concrete, these glass technology itself, but the metallurgies, there seems to be things echoing in science. The recipe of self-healing concrete. Yeah, here we go, right? Lost recipe of self-healing concrete.
Yeah.
And again, and I'm pointing out two things. One, let's look at the Romans and how ingenious this is, which they may have come up with on their own. And did they re-engineer, rediscover, and continue to use a system that had been handed down by the Greeks, handed down when, you have this story of the ancient Egyptians where, hey, you Greeks, you Romans are old. They were talking about the Greeks, right? We're going to talk about, we get to Plato, and then we get to the travelers that were going to Egypt 1,000 years before Plato and 700 years. And they're like, the Egyptians speaking to the fact that you Greeks, you've forgotten who you were as a people. And yet again, here's the Egyptians remembering that. And I think these technologies and these sciences, they became magic. They just, it became holy. It became mystical, and which is great. Doesn't take away from anyone's belief systems, but this is a deeply misunderstood technology that, again, points to a greater human experience and a greater human past and tragedy and terrifying God knows what. I'm a downer this morning.
Well, I mean, quite literally, though, and we discuss it regularly. The fact of, yes, this knowledge becomes a point of control at some point. And it becomes the knowledge of the elite. It becomes the knowledge of the ruling class. Which is typically, the priesthood, what have you, things like that. Those are the ones who end up having direct connection to the divine. And oddly, the ones that also help build the temples to the divine. So it's fascinating to see the way that, yes, these things, and once again, in a repetitive fashion, one of two things happen. Either the conquering society comes in, takes it as their own, adopts it, and crushes where the origins came from, or it turns into the fact of the ruling class and the religious class takes over the knowledge and, crushes the people and rules over the people, So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, quite literally, Jared.
Yeah. And I think this the benefit to just being mindful of this and not that we're having a great discussion, but for people listening, one of the things that I think is important when you're discovering your own consciousness, your own meditative, you're trying practices outside of your maybe Western religion origins. The reality is that you don't have to smash it or step away from it. Sometimes you've been so programmed in a way of thinking or being, you're like just trying to so separate yourself from a modality that you miss some of the truths that are not only in your own life experience, in your own faith and your own consciousness, but then you're trying something new and you may or not realize it, but in trying something new, you may be slipping into the same, rigid and or blinding muting of our history, and where the subtlety comes is if you're aware and know that there's a greater human experience, then instead of just my hope, and I think in saying this or in having presence with this, is that if we put a light on, you don't need to smash or disagree with one's modality, and at the same time as you explore another, by having these conversations in your head about, wait, there's more to just one system or one modality and one history. And that's only important as far as when I have a gut instinct to flow into what might be a very surreal, or you might call it divine or outer ethereal experience within my mind and body. And you might go, wait, is it good or bad or related to my faith or related to my story? And I think when we know these bits of the past, it allows you to go beyond the veil of your own, where your own curtains are. And that process only happens when you have when you know that there's more to the story.
Yeah.
Sounds simple, but I think it's part of the practice.
Well, yeah. And I mean, having that firm understanding of the past, even with what we've been told, despite what may be hidden or obfuscated, what have you, Jared, but knowing a good swath of that really does help you get a true perspective on things. And you brought up a great point that we bring up regularly, that we were just talking about with Barbara Sobani, the idea of, citizen science, the idea of us as citizen scientists, as paranormal investigators into these things. We have to keep a scientific mindset. We have to stop calling data evidence. And remember, it's data. Till it's gone through numerous checks and experiments and everything else, then it's not evidence. It's just data. It's raw data. And it's okay. Data should not threaten your paradigm. It shouldn't threaten anything. Okay? It's data. But at the same token, as science, you could be so caught up in your box of definition that you aren't willing to look at other data.
Yes.
And it's funny because that danger runs on both sides of the fence, both on the esoteric research side as well as on the science side.
I agree. We end up taking a faith. We discover something, we have evidences and data, and we turn it into it quickly goes from being something matter of fact to a part of a more of a modality.
Well, and it's funny because what it reminds me of is Stephen Myers. Hey, Stephen Myers, if you're listening, he's the founder. He's the head of Pharaoh's Pump Foundation, talking about different methods of pyramid construction. Once again, not aliens, us. We don't need aliens. They were pretty ingenious people, flood some water, keep floating the bricks over instead of, taking them off a raft and dragging them through the dirt. Why wouldn't you just flood the plane and float them right over into place? So it's some interesting concept and some very common sense concept. But one of the things that we talk about regularly is that almost cultish religious side of Egyptology to the fact of, so this is what they had to have in order to attain the afterlife, So like in a tomb, you're gonna find all the writings from the Book of the Dead on the wall, or else they're like stuck on Earth. They'll never be able to have the magic spell they need whenever they meet Set to have their heart weighed, things like that, against the weight of a feather to see if they go to the afterlife. They'll be stuck here. So, okay, Egyptology, hard question here. If that's what a tomb is, what the heck is the king's chamber in what is supposed to be a tomb called the Great Pyramid? Because there's none of that. None of that. So like the obvious clash of, well, wait a minute, Egyptology that's called a science, you are completely and utterly contradicting yourself, because how would this be a tomb? There were no artifacts found in it. There was no sarcophagus found in it. There was if it was a sarcophagus, if it was made to ferry somebody to the afterlife, it was like in The Mummy, where you intended this dude to go nowhere. He was supposed to stay locked in there, Yes,
and I don't think for a minute that it's the modern. It's not an untruth to say these survivors or the Egyptian culture that is truly old found some abandoned, amazing giant ruins. And did they use it as tombs or as temples? Sure, they did. And then they copied and made new ones, and they repaired and they did things. But there's clearly a distinction in the technology that built the buildings that originally and what continue to maintain them over, again, an impressive thousands of years for a culture and society to exist when the rest of the world was barely figuring out how to farm. Great. But they're not, you're not looking at the true function of again, you can put, you could take a 747 and I guess make it look like a car. This is not a car.
There are numerous 747 restaurants where like people have refurbed it into a restaurant. Was that the original purpose? No. Was that what it was made for? Was
I've seen
a
them
cafe?
in homes even.
Yeah. And that's a valid point. They're
repurposed. And yet you can make all the story you want that for 1,000 years this has been the most holy restaurant. It's a plane. Do you hear how that sounds?
Everybody has Jesus on their toast here.
Yes. And that's a requirement. There you go. And then Chris is struck by lightning.
Wouldn't be the first time, buddy.
Well, see, there you go. It's like, why not? And then you're, this is the sacred breakfast has been served for 1,300 years.
But even that, Jared, and I bring it up to people all the time, like as far as the like right in the beginning of the Bible in Genesis, back to back, it's very questionable because it says first story of creation, second story of creation. Back to back in the same document, two different stories of how things came to be. So
I have questions like, what happened to story 3, 4, 5, and through to 100?
Yeah.
What happened to those?
What happened to the rest of them?
Did you guys just cut them out, or?
Well, even the fact of there was a whole lot more than the First Council of Nicaea happened. And they were like, okay, well, who's reading this one? Not y'all. Okay, this one's out. Who's reading this one? How about, no. Okay, this one's out. So there was the first edit, then there was a secondary edit that happened later, and then the Protestant Reformation happened, and a whole lot more got cut out, and then King James got a hold of it, and even more got cut out. So and then there's the different translations. So even that in and of itself is the fact of it is a hodgepodge of something that is put together. And that's just the actual history of it.
Yes, and then what happens is that somehow, you put together something like a text and say, well, this is the true text, and then there's the Gnostic text, or then there's this, that, and it's like, well, hold on. Somebody chose these texts over others, and then there's a spiritual component where we put a story and say, well, this thing that's out of our control and our knowledge and out of our physical human realm decided that this thing is in, and this thing's magical, this thing's not, this thing's holy, this thing's not. But wait a minute, it's all the same information, yet you're placing a value that's outside of any other discernment, reasonable human discernment, to say, this set of information is true, and this set of information is not true. The truth is that we have the same pile of information, and you've separated the two, where there's all this valuable information we're very linear about our the way we. And then we filter history, and we filter what we find. It's Cremo has said it. It's like we don't find, or I've heard it from other people. It's like they only find what they're looking for. So you can dig past, and I've heard stories of you have a Greek archaeologist, and they're blowing through, and it's like, oh, here's some cool Roman stuff. They don't care. They're digging for the Greek stuff. They keep digging. They'll dig right through a layer, and they'll pull out artifacts, but they're like, I don't have an interest in that. I only have an interest in this layer.
Yeah, we are going to expand out on this layer because that's not what we're looking for.
Yeah. and so that you find what you're looking for. So you toss out all the evidences of existence to get to the layer you want to. You don't care that it was on top of a mastodon bone, or there was a mastodon bone in the Greek temple. You care that there was a Greek skeleton, and it's like, well, wait, what are they doing with a mastodon skeleton? And what were they using it for? And you find what you are looking for, and then the rest of the evidence is secondary or dismissed or not relevant. And so you get so departmentalized. It's like, we don't have a left and a right hand doctor anymore. The joke has always been, or the observation is, we're so departmentalized and specialized now, even with the human body, that there's a left and a right hand doctor. Well, now we're getting down to like digits. Now there's a left and a right hand doctor who only works on the thumb, who only works on the pinky, and only works on the top 2 digits. Yeah. We're getting so departmentalized that the whole picture is being there's evidence is being lost in the whole picture because of the specialization. No one's backing out and directing the movie of it's become not an inquisition, the inquest to I don't want to say inquisition to dig.
Well, and that's just it. And we had a great conversation not too long ago with our good friend Anne Celine about, like, why are you investigating?
Right.
What is the point of your investigation? Are you investigating to prove something, or are you investigating to confirm belief in something? What is the predication of your investigation to begin with? Yeah. Because if you're coming at it from a purely scientific endeavor, those kind of things don't really happen. They don't exist in that kind of way.
No, they don't. And some of the reasons Michael and I were just talking about this, not spoiling episode 2, but when it comes out, one of the things we speak to is the Rockefeller Foundation. There's different motivations within the organization to deal with Western religion. Meanwhile, there's this advent of Darwinism and the idea of pure science being pure science. But within that, there's not even pure science, because, again, you have Darwinism, which is a theory, dismissing creation origin, which in itself was such a paradigm shift. It then negates the more nuanced details, the factual details of not all science is fact, it is also theory. And just because you have a great theory about Darwinism doesn't mean that if the facts in the ground show million, 2 million, 8 million, 20 million, 60 million year old human artifacts, means you don't dismiss it because the theory of evolution is now Darwinian. The idea is the concept of Darwinian could exist, like, this is how maybe humans evolved, but maybe they did it 60 million or 100 million or 200 million or a billion years ago. But we take a scientific theory, turn it into a new religion or fact, throw out facts that don't fit the theories. Meanwhile, we're fighting this barely 100 and something year old. I mean, modern archaeology isn't even 200 years old. And I'm saying that because we're getting up there. We're over 160 years now. But modern science and all the fields, they're so young, modern. Yeah. And granted, the alchemy and the work that we've done for thousands of years and the herb medicines and everything else. Sure. And Dragon Man. And we were just talking about it.
Yeah. All these things, like Dragon Man has been found in the last few years, the almost 10 feet tall with a volume of his skull almost double. Like 1.75 times larger than the average human. We've found, the Hobbit people down near New Zealand, stuff like that. But when you talk about, and I always have to remind people of the theory of evolution. Remember that first word, theory.
No.
Still an operational theory. It's not like saying gravity. We don't say like the theory of gravity. Gravity is a proven scientific principle. So it's just gravity.
Go fall on your ass right now.
If it was just evolution, then it would be evolution, but it's not. It's the theory of evolution, because it's still an operational theory. Exactly. And when you look at the quote closest relative we have, Lucy, that's one I bring up all the time. Like, I'll bring up the images of Lucy right now, because Come on.
Yeah, while you're pulling up the images, I mean, I'll preface it. Michael Cremos, The Forbidden Archaeologist, the book, his seminal work, there is a massive section in detail about Lucy's origins and everything about it. To say that it's a human ancestor is completely questionable.
That's as complete a skeleton as Lucy is. Now, granted, you have part of a hip, you have part of the sacrum, the tailbone there, you have a hip, you have part of a jawbone, a few pieces of skull. So you could get, maybe a few things out of that, and see that, sure, it might be along the same lineage. But to say that it is our closest relative, to say that is direct proof, still data. Tons of data there, but zero proof.
There's no DNA for that. It's a monkey. It could be anything, but there's no DNA data that shows that Lucy's anything other than some sort of a primate. And on top of it, the bones and over the period of space that they found the bones, and so they were all attributed to that skeleton. All of it, again, great work. A human went out in the field and found a bunch of bones. And that is a hard thing to do. The act of actually locating the skeleton was a hard thing to do. But to say that it was a human relative, that it was a descendant of humanity is untrue, because we have, for the date of Lucy, we already know we have 60 million year old, 20 to 60 million year old evidence of human skeletons found in Table Mountain. They found full skeleton under 15 feet of slate, and it was investigated by the Harvard trained state geologist. The skeleton, the tools, the work solidly under Table Mountain. They drilled in sideways and they locate in a layer of geological layer that is 20 to 60 million years old, human artifacts and a full anatomically correct human skeleton. So, great. Lucy's 3 million years old, but the Red Crag, we have, again, human, anatomically correct humans being found in 5, 6, 7 million year old layers of the earth. We have human boot prints that the Rockefeller Foundations were looking at that are 120 million year old. All day long, Lucy doesn't fit in the existence of modern humans in 3 million years. In 3.2 million years old, she's a monkey. If she's a she. This skeleton represents something. It doesn't mean it isn't something, maybe an advanced human race engineered. That's the other thing. It's like we keep thinking we are not the highest technology we've ever been. Yep. We mess with genes. We have stem cell research. We do a million things right now that could say at some other epoch of civilization, humanity was modifying creatures, modifying themselves, creating experiments, trying to solve cancer, who knows? Like, we did it, we lost it. We did it, we lost it. We lived longer. We have the Sumerian Kings list. Oh shit, we're all living thousands of years. And now we're not. Now we are. Now we create a system that works good. It's an earth grid. It's on the ley lines, and it uses all these piezoelectric soils like Terra Preta and all these megalithic buildings and the Great Pyramid. They're actually regeneration chambers. Well, shit, now we've gone from an unlimited access to regeneration chambers all over the earth, and now there's a cataclysm, and now only the special people, or it's the most wealthy or the most accessible with the militaries, and so many people are being regenerated, but now not everyone is, and now there's mummies. It's like, well, I can't get into the chamber, and we don't have any more freezers, and well, let's maybe mummification again is now it's a go to the afterlife, and and then there's all this religion and mysticism around it. But what if that regeneration, what if in a Stargate world that the Great Chamber was one of these regeneration chambers, but it used to be one of many. And now here we are, we're talking about, again, a human race that is so rich in a history that we just have shadows, and we have the words of it, but we have the genetic memories of it. It's clear that we have a really exciting, interesting past that is bleeding into how we live today and how we recover and manage disease and catastrophic injury, our mindsets, the Joe Dispenza, Wim Hof, inflammatory rebuild your spine, and the beyond the placebo effect. I mean, our human connected psychic consciousness. I mean, all of it is clearly related to ancient high technology? I almost Dennis Stone that answer.
It's, it is the fact that we have long lineages of this stuff. We have long stories about this. Again, the people like the Knights Templar and alchemists, stuff like that, did not pull their knowledge out of nowhere.
No,
it didn't just like randomly appear one day. They got their information from earlier information, and one of the easiest examples that I give of things like that is magical and esoteric traditions. When you start tracing things like back to ancient Greece, through Rome, up through Europe, through the Germanic tribes. Things like that, and into the Celtic faith, into the Celtic religion, into the way that magic found its way into medieval times, and then into alchemy, and it literally is a natural progression of thought form. And it's fascinating to see that it goes back all the way to ancient Greece and ancient Egyptian tradition, and even ancient Hebrew tradition, things like that. That's one of the things that we discuss with Nathaniel Gillis regularly is the idea of solemnic magic, that kind of magic, specifically sigils, that kind of stuff. Like, that is a technology. It is a specific kind of technology, sigil magic. So, well,
you magically swipe your hand on a piece of glass and it creates an image, and it goes places and does things, and you can speak and see humans. I mean, the things that we would say, that's just technology. And it's like, again, we have this attachment to traditions. And that's good. We put meaning in these things that are, there's a meaning to hundreds of years, time. We put this meaning on time. And then there's a point where it goes from day to day. And it's like, hey, I have these New Year's resolutions to, and I'm living my life day to day to, well, there's something magical about the psychics and the druids, so we can go back 150 years to the mat and all the revision, the rediscovery of Egypt, and the idea of like mysticism, modern magic, and we look at the things in the last 150, 200 years, and then we go back to the druids, and then we go, well, they were doing this over 1,000, and there you go. It's like, what if we go back 5,000, 10,000 years and have eternal storage in a quartz crystal that's in the polygonal construction of the Great Pyramid of Ollantaytambo. So you're looking at that square represented 300 terabytes.
Yep. And when you're talking about esoteric traditions, things like, Atlantean crystals that were made to hold records, the fact that, crystals amplify energy, things like that. Like, this is average stuff, folks. You may think it's, hoodoo. I remember probably about a year and a half ago, my wife was at a basketball thing with a bunch of moms, and one of the moms was funning on how her sister was all woo-woo with her crystals and everything else, and, crystal energies and vibrations. And I'm like, next time, ask her if she's still that way and what she thinks, but bring up her cell phone that's actively using lithium-ion crystals to power it, and a liquid crystal display to show her everything, and using wafers of silicone and things like that, wafers of minerals to generate LED light,
Well, there's not a single computer that the heartbeat of every computer is crystals.
Yeah.
Everything you're saying, without it, we wouldn't have it.
Yep. Yeah.
What were you raising up?
A crystal. And this is in my hand the whole time that I talk on the air regularly.
Yeah. Quartz crystals.
But the idea that a quartz crystal generates piezoelectric power, You know, that if you squeeze this crystal, like it will generate energy.
Yes, which is Tesla's whole. Tesla had a whole design for an airplane that was going to run on crystal technology.
Yeah,
just that. And here we go: eternal storage, 300 terabytes of quartz crystal.
Yeah, eternal storage because, well, that crystal is locked in phase. It's not going to change. You would have to literally melt the crystal in order for it to lose its consistency. So as long as that crystal maintains its shape, it maintains the data.
So you got to wonder what's in all the crystal and all that. One, we don't know where granite came from, the geological understanding of granite, but here we have perfectly poured polygonal blocks with crystals in them. You got to wonder, is there technology programmed directly into all megalithic polygonal construction? Is the history, the memories, the instructions, everything we need to know, is it all in this technology? Is it all in these pieces? Is it all in these quartz elements?
Yep.
I just wonder.
And I'm bringing up live science right now, where quite literally they've just figured out that the piezoelectric properties of quartz during earthquakes is what causes formation of gold. So
you got to be kidding me. So
like that article is from 2024. That's it.
Okay, send that one to me, please, because that needs to be looked at. Yeah, that needs to be looked at.
Yeah,
I need to speak on that one
because not all gold comes from outer space. So the Earth makes gold, things like that. That's why you find it in quartz. Everything else, that's why you find it near fault lines, that kind of stuff. So yeah. It's why look at where the gold rushes were. California, Alaska, that kind of stuff, like where it is massively fault city.
Yeah. That adds an element, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about that. But even when you're talking alchemy and the understanding of that, the how to make gold. Like, there you have it right there from live science, folks. Earthquakes can trigger quartz into forming gold nuggets. So that's one of the many things that, our ancients were very well aware of. It was one of those like that. When you find quartz, you're going to find rare minerals, stuff like that. So it's interesting to see how even quartz helps propagate those things. And it's always great chatting with you about this kind of stuff, Jared. We typically you or I have an aha moment during our conversations where it's like, what is that about? Send me that.
Yes, that is definitely one of those things.
I will send that to you. Just as a geology freak and fan of rocks and minerals, it was one of those like, wow, look at that. What amazing new data to see.
Yeah.
So
I think the idea of 300 terabytes in a thin piece of quartz, just again, the point is the quartz and what it can hold. And that in itself too is another one of wow moments, because again, it's why the consistency of quartz used in ancient building construction, why the piezoelectric nature of the soils, why the self-replications of not only soils, but self-replication of concretes. Mm-hmm. There's clearly a longevity. At some point, humanity developed a longevity, not only for their physical bodies, but for their constructions. And they built to withstand some eternal events.
Yep. Absolutely. And as typical, we have lost sight of that, and we have lost way with that, to the point that like if what's it called? Without Humans, I think it's called. It was a show on the History Channel for a while. That literally explores like what would happen to this major city if humans disappeared. And typically, like within 50 years, it's overgrown with weeds. Like it looks like what you see on like 12 Monkeys whenever he comes out.
Yeah.
It's just like, animals roaming around because the zoo closed down and the people died or left, but the animals were still there and the cages rotted away. And like, it just crazy. Like what we know as modern society just dilapidates and goes away within a generation. So
I like old abandoned nuclear plants. There's so many Russian and European and in the U.S. There's these abandoned facilities, and you look at not just Chernobyl, but you look at the way the weeds, vines, the grass just overgrow vehicles, and the amount of rust, the amount of damage. It's crazy in 30 years or 20 years or 40 years, and not even 100. And then it's amazing. It just claims it back and it's gone. It's dust.
Yeah. Even now, like Chernobyl, there's the blue dogs of Chernobyl. There's like a whole breed of dog that has adapted to live there. Molds, funguses, all kinds of stuff that have populated Chernobyl.
Okay, great. As long as we're not dealing with like monster Godzilla frogs
no kaiju.
There we go. There's a shout out.
Jared, always great talking with you, man. It's always great catching up. I always love our conversations. They go places. You go places. Let everybody know everything about RkeoX, where they can go to contact you, where they can go to become a part of things, where they can go to follow the podcast, and where they can go to get their copy of It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us by Jared Murphyt.
RkeoX.com. So it sounds like RkeoX, but RkeoX.com. There's also a YouTube channel, RkeoX, and you will find our podcast there. You'll be able to see some embedded podcasts on the website. We are not currently going back to Belize or digging for Mayan ruins. We've been, there's been a transitional space because I'm adding along with the new edition of It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us. It will be a new release, a hardcover book that is coming out. It's not available currently on the website or online. Just wait for it, please, everyone. It will be coming. The It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us, Discovering Our Lost History, the follow-up, will be coming sooner than later. And your attention as far as podcasts go, Michael Cremo and I are working on The Forbidden Archaeologist. That podcast, first episode done. Yes. We'll be releasing that. It'll be on Extreme Human Antiquity, Michael, mcremo.com. It will be on The Forbidden Archaeologist. We'll be on Facebook. RkeoX is also on Facebook. You can find me there. And it's not a big public page, but there are a lot of different ways to find me and us. And the podcast itself, I'm still doing and releasing episodes. We're on all the podcast catchers, and gosh, that's a lot. But and here on Curious Realms.
Always. Jared, thanks so much again for your time as always, my friend. Hold the line real quick while we close things out with the audience. While you are online checking out everything from Jared Murphyt and RkeoX at RkeoX.com. Everybody, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can find our videos page. Our videos page has all of the embedded YouTube channels of our guests, so you makes it nice and easy to find them, to like, follow, subscribe. Make sure and hit that like, follow, subscribe, and share button from Curious Realm. Also, make your way over to Curious Research. CuriousResearch.org. That's where you can get your copy of the Field Observation and Encounter Log if you are a researcher in the world of paranormal, esoteric, UFO, UAP, doing cryptozoological field research. This is your guide to be able to write down your data as it happens to you in the field, write down your observations so that your data is ready to shake hands with science come the day that you need to do so. Thank you so much, as always, everybody, for your open hearts, your open minds. That is what makes the conversation. And without the conversation, humanity does not march forward. So remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and stay curious. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. To download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault, or become a sponsor of Curious Realm, visit our website at curiousrealm.com. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast and video services, curiousrealm.com, as well as KGRA Radio, APRTV, and the official Curious Realm app for Roku devices. Curious Realm is a proud member of the Ground Zero Media family of podcasts. For more shows and members-only content, visit groundzeroplus.com today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious, and remember, the other side is always watching.